Today we're going to be talking about my thoughts on the Terastallize, the Terra mechanic, and why I don't really think it's going to be a big deal. I think a lot of people are expecting a lot from this mechanic, and they're going into it under the illusion that it's going to be just as important as Dynamax. It's going to be just as big as Dynamax. It's going to be just as big as Mega Evolution, Z-moves, all those things. And realistically, I don't think that's the case. I'm going to get right to the point, and then we're going to talk about why. I'm going to try and prove my point. But basically, those mechanics were what the metas in those games were built on, right? So, Mega Evolution. You picked your Mega, and you built a team around it. Z-moves. You picked like your Z-move user, and you built like a team around it. And Dynamax, you picked your weakness policy proc mono, your big Dynamax options, your Airstream users, and you built a team around it. And that's how most players that started in Sword and Shield, and even started in like Ultra Sun and Moon, and even going back to 2014, the players that started around that time, they're conditioned into thinking that like I should build a team around the generation's gimmick. That's completely normal, and that's how most people see it. So when people come in and they tell me, like, you can make the perfect defensive type with Terra, or you can hit this for an additional type of coverage move that didn't have before, or you can make your moves that you already have even stronger with this Terra mechanic, I'm here to tell you that that's like not a new mechanic. We've had hidden power in the game for years. We've had gems in the game for years. Hell, if you're talking about making the perfect defensive type, we've had damage reduction berries in the game for years. As someone who builds a lot of teams that feature all three of those things, that's probably one of the really cool things that I do with my teams is feature those type of mechanics and items. This is not new. I'm not really excited for this mechanic, and that's because it's not really a new mechanic or anything. It's just generally making the game more accessible. It's forcing that type of playstyle down a more casual audience's throat, right? That's what it's doing. It's basically just showing every single person that you can use damage reduction to your advantage. You can use a little bit more coverage to your advantage. Like, I know I'm totally butchering this whole intro, but basically, like I have a dumb words document, and I'm gonna look at it. But basically, let's see, we got a sub too. Barrel dropping the sub, appreciate it. Appreciate the sub. Yeah, I realistically think, I realistically think, since I've already butchered the intro, and I'm gonna make another one, other formats were built around their gimmicks, right? And this one, it's gonna be like, I made this analogy yesterday on stream. Terastallize, right? If you're to look at like Dynamax, Mega Evolution, Z-moves, those were all the meat of a sandwich, right? Those were all the meat of a sandwich. And, it's the main thing the mechanics are built around, the formats are built around, the metas are built around. But Terastallize is more like the seasoning. It's like the ketchup, the mustard, the cheese, the other things that make formats fun. And so it's going to be a good mechanic, but it's not going to be what the teams are built around. So that's basically my thoughts on it. And we're going to talk about a bunch of teams and show examples of teams that have, like, formats that have had good formats where the meta is not as built around the mechanics and stuff like that. So let's open this up. And we'll also, if you guys have questions, feel free to interrupt me and talk. Let's see. I'll go back and see what Math Bandit said. Do you think Game Freak internationally scaled down the significance of gem mechanics for Scarlet and Violet, or do you think they wanted something on the level of prior gimmicks that didn't hit the mark? I think what they were doing was, like I was talking about, the new mechanic, Terastallize, is forcing casual players to understand, like, damage mitigation, additional coverage, right? Hidden powers were hard to understand for people back in the day. Like, you couldn't just randomly have a good hidden power. And also, before they even made hidden power just the base 60 move, hidden power was based off the actual amount of IVs you had. Like, if you had, like, 2 IVs in this stat and 13 in this one and 13 in that one, you'd have, like, a weak-ass hidden power, right? And so it was complicated, and it was not user-friendly for casual players. Same thing kind of goes for, like, damage reduction berries. People don't really think about those. They're not on, like, the forefront of the game. So this is forcing every single player to understand those mechanics just a little bit more. SB Crash says, I talked to Joey about it, and the biggest difference he said was the surprise factor. Like with Megas, you kind of know what Pokemon the opposite team is going to be, but it's more for a one for fun game. I think that's the same thing can be said about gems though and Z moves, and like Wise Dog was talking about earlier, like Protect is going to be really important for dealing with it. All right, let's see. Wait, so in theory this could lower the skill ceiling? Oh, definitely. Like, this is just making the game easier. If you look at like every single mechanic that has come around since like, if you look at like every single mechanic that's come around since 2014, all it has done has make the game easier. The game was harder back in the day. Sorry, it was harder. You actually had to be good at Pokemon. You couldn't just herp derp around. Like, I apologize if you're a new player and you take that personally, but the game used to be harder. Yeah. I'm not even talking about getting the mons. I'm not even talking about other things like that. Like, no, the game itself, like, you couldn't lean on your mechanic. You had to actually outplay your opponent. So the game just gets easier, you know. Formats change, but you know, and players have gotten way better. But the game used to be harder. That you couldn't like Dynamax Herp Derp around. You couldn't Z move. You couldn't Mega Evolve. Like, you had to like pin your opponent with fake outs, pin your opponent with good defensive typing, use things like gems, use things like damage reduction berries, use things like different hidden powers, and you had to like out pin your opponent. That's why you still see players like Joey Pokeyame, MV, who are the Thunder, and those players that played like back then, they're still good today. Those players like Wolf and Zhang that played back then, well, they're still good today. I wonder why. You know, it's almost like they were really good players the whole time. You know, players that were able to conquer like the old way that we used to play are just good players, you know? You say Dynamax lowered the skill ceiling, a less impactful gimmick will raise it. The thing is, though, like, so when I say that this mechanic lowers the skill ceiling, right? And you saying that it raises it, it's the type of thing to where I think adding any sort of gimmick lowers the skill ceiling. I will say, if you were to compare Dynamax and Terastallize, which one will raise the skill ceiling? That's definitely Terastallize. Dynamax is not good. Like, Dynamax is like literally made to be like the most easy to use, give the most amount of power to someone that doesn't know what they're doing, right? It doubles your stats. You're immune to like everything. You're firing off Z moves every single turn that can change your weather, boost all your stats. It's like absolutely crazy how the hell that even happened, right? And yeah, that's what you're like. Okay, cool. Yeah, because when I said like when I said that the new mechanic will lower the skill ceiling, that's just because I think all mechanics lower skill ceilings. That's my opinion. As someone who played, look at this. Look at all of the list of the games that I've played official VGC tournaments for. Now, I'm going to give a little disclaimer. I only played in online official events until 2013 was my first actual VGC regional, but I played VGC at like grassroots tournaments in 2011 and 2012, but I was mostly a singles player. I started playing singles near the end of Gen 3 competitively. I started going to tournaments, so I was a singles player from like 2006 to about 2012, 2013, exclusively only singles. I only dabbled in VGC if when I went to the singles tournament, they're like, oh, this is a VGC tournament instead, or I already won the singles tournament, and then they also had a VGC tournament I would play, and I'd probably win that too, right? So that's kind of how it worked. And so I know the VGC 2011 and 2012 teams are terrible, right? That's we can just scratch those off the list. I didn't know what I was doing in VGC till 2013. I think everyone, by the way, though, the teams that I made down there were still good enough to win the events that I was talking about. So it is what it is. And it was all just singles sets. But anyways, let's talk about a couple of the other things. This is not made for me to just gloat and say like, oh, look how good my teams are, guys. A lot of these teams I didn't even fill in. Like, it's just the mons, right? So let's go back. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. Neve says the best gimmick is regional variants. I don't think that's a gimmick, right? I don't think a Pokedex inclusion is a gimmick. A gimmick is something, the thing about like a gimmick is it's something that like only works once and is like, not only works once, but like it's a tactic that you use in game. I wouldn't say that like having access to this Pokedex, that's like calling Zacian a gimmick because it's in this game's Pokedex. I don't think that's right, you know? Got to see the Crystal team. There's nothing. It's just so what I did with that Crystal team was that was my very first VGC event. It was an online competition. I think the VODs might still be on my YouTube somewhere. But basically, 2011 really limited decks. You would lead Crystal and Caracosta, and turn 1 they both have Sturdy. One is like a Lumberry, the other is like a Leftovers or something, or some other sort of defensive item, I would turn one just double Shell Smash. And like realistically, your opponent would either take out one of them or take out none of them and just both proc their Sturdy, and then from there you would just +2 speed Rock Slide, KO everything. Singles. It's like, you mean I could have 2 Shell Smashes? And then you surrounded it with like, you know, Frizzy and Truck are really good in that format. Fake Out from Scrafty. Electros was a good pivot. So that was basically it. It wasn't like anything spectacular. But we'll talk a little bit in a sec. I gotta get my ideas for this part of the thing. I don't think I'm gonna make this a video, because like I've already dropped the ball like 3,000 times. Maybe I'll make it in like its own video where I don't have to suck. Alright. So I guess like what I was talking about was basically, if you take a look at all of these formats, this is basically every format that I've played over 10 years for VGC. We got 2022 over here. There wasn't really a 2021 format. We're not even going to really talk about 2020 because like it only had like one event. But it's basically, you know, Dynamax up here. So let's see, Dynamax right here. This is 2019. This is Ultra Sun and Moon. So these two are Ultra Sun and Moon. I think 2018 and 2019 are Ultra Sun and Moon. But like you could use Megas and Z moves in this format. So that's why I got like Mega Salamence. I'm using like Z move on my Incineroar. 2018 was also Megas and Z moves, but it wasn't with the restricteds. So it's double Megas and Z move Incineroar. I think Zapdos also might have had a Z move on the on this team. And then 2017, it was just Z moves. I used 3 different Z moves on this team. I used Groundium Z, I used Groundium Z, Farium Z, and Psychium Z on my Raichu. So I used 3 different Z moves on this team. The team was definitely built around that mechanic. 2017, this is the team I ended up taking to Worlds. It used Z move Raichu and Z move Golduck. So good team there. This team 2016, no Z moves. This is the last format. This is Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. This is where restricteds come in. So you can see like every 3 or 4 years we get a format with like restricteds. It's very similar to like 2019 and 2022. And it was Megas were the thing that were featured. This team uses 2 Megas. This team 2015, this is the start of Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. I have two teams for these formats. Note again, Megas are the things that are featured. 2 Megas here. So you can see that in these, we're not even done with this list, but you can see that every single format that I'm trying to feature, whatever gimmick is featured, the teams have those gimmicks, and the rest of the team is fleshed out around those gimmicks. This is the team that I top cut Lancaster Regional with. It was built around Mega Sceptile and a shit ton of mons that literally made Sceptile work. So the whole format, the whole team, every single team is like built around the actual gimmick, built around the generation's flavor, Mega Evolution, Z moves, things like that. This is a 2014 team. This is around the World Championships. This team featured Mega Manectric and Mega Scizor. Again, you're building around your Mega. 2014, this is a team that I used at the last regional. I got top 16 San Jose regional with. This is a very standard team. They only used 1 Mega, but it was Mega King, best one that was there. So now we get to 2013. Remember, 2013 didn't have those Megas, didn't have those Z moves, didn't have Dynamax or anything like that. So what are you featuring in 2013? The closest thing we have to feature are gems. And you don't really build a team around gems. You know, you don't really say, if I could have a 1.5 boost one time, I'd take those odds and I'd build my whole team around it. That's not really a great mechanic, right? It's a good mechanic. I think it's balanced, but it's not so powerful that you are forced by the game to build around it like something like Megas, Evolutions, or Dynamax, or Z moves are. So, in this team, I used Dark Gem Scrafty to give my team additional coverage versus other Trick Room teams. And then my team was built to be able to Trick Room against faster teams while be able to deny Trick Room against other teams. This is probably one of the better teams that I think I've ever really made. And this was the first team I ever took to a regional. I made top 32. I did a really, really good job with this team. And it just shows that like this scaled back the power creep so much to where you basically just have a standard game with additional coverage. Oh, I also used damage reduction berries. I used Akaberry Metagross. I used Yachi Garchomp, I think. So like I'm using damage reduction berries, I'm using gems, and so basically showing like with this team right here, again, I didn't flesh out any of the stats because it's so old. I just wanted to give you an idea of the mons. But the thing to take away is this format was pure. This format was just a general format. You have to focus on pinning your opponent, and it's the items, the abilities, the speed tiers, the move sets, all of those things are what dictate the play and not the gimmick. And I really want you guys to understand that with Terra, we're going to see a lot of that. You're just going to see teams. And it's not going to be a sort of team where if you're not using this Terra, you lose. Or if you're not using, like, Terra's going to be like a secondary thought after looking at the team. Right? Like, it's going to be nice. It's going to be a good mechanic. And I was talking a little bit earlier about things you guys can be doing to actually, you know, prepare yourselves for Scarlet and Violet with this information, saying that, like, I want you guys to look at the mechanic not as the thing you should be building around. Like, don't spend all your time trying to get the perfect defensive Terra type. Don't spend all your time trying to get the perfect offensive coverage type. Don't worry about that. Build teams that are really, really balanced. And then from there, think like, oh, use Terra to solve your problem once you have balance. Once you already make a team that has good defensive typing, a little bit good coverage, and once you make sure you have like fake out, speed control, maybe some redirection, maybe some screens, intimidates. Once you have all those boxes ticked, then you add Terra. It's the exact opposite of all these other formats where you start with the gimmick and build around it. You add Terra at the end and you say, man, this would be like, I wish I had just a little bit more psychic coverage. I wish I had just a little bit more protection from psychic types. Oh, I wish I had a little bit more poison coverage. Oh, I wish I had just a little bit more of this, a little bit of spice at the end. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people just aren't looking at when they're looking at this mechanic. They're trying to say, I can build this really cool Gyarados that is going to Terralize into grass. It's going to be unaffected by Rage Powder. It's going to be unaffected by all this stuff. And it's going to do all these things. It's going to solve all my problems. And like in reality, that Gyarados that you're building is going to get fake outed. It's going to get intimidated. Reflex are going to get set up. It's going to get redirected by a Follow Me user. It's going to get hit with a Prankster move. It's going to get Feather Danced. Like there's a million bad things that are going to happen to your God-saving Terramon. And I think that everyone is used to the gimmick Pokemon carrying. Think about it. Dynamax. Mega Evolution. Z-moves were also still really, really big. Like, Z-moves were freaking huge, right? And I really want you guys to open up the idea of, like, not putting all your eggs in a Terra basket and just making sure that your teams work first. Let me answer this question. Been looking at Terra for Arcanine as a Swiss Intimidate Army Knife. I'm like, oh, I wish I was better against sand teams. Terra Ground Arcanine. Well, that's basically it. Like, use Terra at the end to help cover up for bad matchups. And we also talked about using like more protects to be able to scout what Terra your opponent's going to be using. It's a good idea. Being able to wait for them to reveal their Terra and then punish with your own. It's really important. But what I was talking about, what you can be doing to actually prepare right now is start looking at your teams, first of all, that you're going to be building with that in mind. Add Terra to the end of an already made team. So start looking at old teams that did well at the start of previous formats. These are all teams that I've used over the years in various formats. Somewhere near the start of the format, somewhere near the end, somewhere in the middle. But like, think about it. Take a look at these cores that are already established, known to do well, and say, oh man, if that Duskmane can change his type, I change it to this. That Garchomp, like, let's take a look at our random teams. Like, just think about the slight changes you would make in your own teams to help cover for these things. You don't even need to know the meta for the new game. Start thinking about the slight changes you would make. You can even go look up other teams that did well at the start of Regional and start noticing, like, oh man, I watched this video where he talked about the mons that are confirmed. All the mons that he talked about are in, like, this team, or a big chunk of them. Like, if you're someone that wants to play a lot of Lilycole, go look up Lilycole teams that have done well in the past and start thinking to yourself, like, okay, so this Lilycole team, you can see, let's say, for example, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Go look up 2017 regionals. You're going to see, like, top 32. There's probably a lot of Lilycole teams that are, like, not winning the tournament, but they're in a bulk of the top 32. And you may think, like, well, why didn't they just win? Right? And so you start looking at the teams that actually won those events, and you may be thinking about what in those teams really stopped Lilycole from doing well. And start thinking, what changes could you make using the Terra mechanic to give Lilycole the advantage versus teams like that beat it in the past, right? For example, it's water teams that usually beat the Lilycole. But, you know, like, there's so many different things you can do, and I want you to look at Terra a lot more as, like, the added flavor, the added spice, the tech choices that you would make, instead of, like, an all-in mechanic that if you're not building around turn 1, you're losing. And just look at it less like Dynamax and more like a hidden power. Because that's basically what it is. Like I talked about, we've had this mechanic for years. We've had hidden power, we've had gems for years. This is just making you use it. This is giving you like a hidden power that you're kind of forced to use. Let's be up on YouTube. It's not. It's not. I butchered all of it. So, I mean, I guess if people want to see, me put this on YouTube, I can. But like, this is the most disorganized discussion I've ever had in my life, and I even had my notes. But I'm not like Moxie Boosted. I'm not like a script kind of guy. I have little things written down, like but I also don't want to clickbait people. So it's like, I feel like if I made that video with that title, it would get views, but there's good and bad things. Sub was about time. Yo, I appreciate you, friend. Doing the big Prime sub. I'll put some subs up for that. Yeah, if you guys want to see this on YouTube, let me know. I could probably edit it to make the idea function correctly. If you don't Terra and are running Terra Blast, you have an 80 base power, probably useless normal moves. So that's something to think about. I mean, yeah, that's generally a thing. Yes, please. Okay, but my watch time though, my analytics, they'll go down because I'm rambling. I could probably edit it, you know. But yeah, I think that I could put it on YouTube. It's just that, again, I want to reiterate, people are putting way too many eggs in the Terra basket. They're saying that, like, I'm going to get the perfect Terra Pokemon, it's going to solve my problems. And in doing so, I really, really just want to say, please do not forget to do all the other things important with team building and think about Terra at the end. And for everyone that says, like, how can I do my Terra type at the end? I have to start with Mons. You need to, like, get out a pencil and paper or, like, a showdown team builder and build your team on there, and then think about what Terra type you need at the end. Get, like, a type, defensive type calculator. These are on Maryland. There's a bunch of different places that have, like, team builders and stuff like that. You need to do all that work before. And then once you finally know exactly what you want, then go catch your Mons, then go breed your Mons, and then you do your Terra type at the very, very, very end. It's not something you start with. And I think that everyone's going to go into the format thinking, I'm going to do this Terra, I'm going to be building around Terra Grass Gyarados, I'm going to be building around Steel Hydreigon, and that's totally not the way you should be looking at it if you want to use this mechanic correctly. Like, if you're the person that's doing that, you will lose to people that are doing what I'm saying, basically. They will see you go all in with your Terra mechanic, they'll Lamau, they'll beat your Terramon, and then your whole team was set up to support that one Pokemon that's useless. Like, this isn't the type of format where one Mon carries. It's not Dynamax, it's not restricted, it's not Mega Evolutions, and you guys aren't at, like, it's not your fault for thinking that those sort of Pokemon are, it's not your fault for thinking that's how teams should be built. Because that's how the game's been conditioning everyone for the past 10 years. Terra about to make breeding a massive pain if typing is random. You know what I think? I think what they're going to do is I think they're going to have a Destiny Knot / Everstone for passing Terra type. I wouldn't even be surprised if, like, Everstone passed Terra type. Yeah. I definitely agree with your thoughts. The best thing you can do at regional is perform with your team without even showing your Terra type. Yep. That's going to be a big thing, I think, as well. Like, not showing your Terra. Do you think a Terra will lead to a high variance metagame, which will cause less competitive landscape? So, I guess, like I was talking about, like, Terra's not going to lead. It's not going to be Terra that makes the metagame not fun. It's just hidden power with, like, a couple extra bells and whistles. Right? It's that's all it is. It's hidden power with, like, a little bit of, like, a gem / like damage reduction berry spice, right? That's all it is. So, like, it's not going to be Terra's fault that the game's not good. The only thing that might suck is, like, people Terralizing into, like, a ghost type to avoid fake out or something, and that might disincentivize fake out users, which makes pinning harder. But then that's not going to break the game. That just makes pinning harder. You have to do it without fake out. People are going to have to learn new tricks. You're going to have to rely a little bit more on speed control than just fake outs. More akin to, like, how Regieleki works now. Regieleki is basically as good as a fake out because you can electroweb things, make them slow, and your teammate just hits them. You don't even need the fake out, right? So, but I do think that it's not going to be Terra that breaks the game. It's going to be, like, other abilities, other speed tiers, other mons, other abilities. And it's going to be things like that item, right? What's the thing that says, like, you can't get fake outed? That's something that could, like, break the game, only because we're going into it looking so much from, like, a fake out is a mandatory mechanic. So if people take that same mentality into the game, that it could be a problem. But, you know, that's not Terra's fault. What's good? I saw the title. This is a hot take. Yeah, we already talked about it. We basically talked about it already. But yeah, Covert Cloak. Is that what it's called? Yeah. And so that's why I'm talking about. I'm telling everyone, like day one, the first team you make for the ladder, please promise me. If you're playing VGC and you make a team that goes on the ladder, use Frisk. You're welcome. Like, Frisk is going to solve all your problems. You're like, wow, I didn't know that was Scarfed. I didn't know that was Sash. I didn't know that was Covert Cloak. And then not only do you know that it's there, when you start thinking, when you start wanting to use those mons, you remember, oh, I remember that one time I fought one of those guys. They had a Covert Cloak. I'm going to try that set on this. You're learning more about sets without actually doing any research.